Let me introduce you to two prosecutors in New York that could scare Donald Trump right now, more than anyone else. They are the ones working normally behind the scenes on the Trump Organization criminal probe. Manhattan DA Cy Vance's office will make one of the most consequential legal calls ever, and soon. It will be this year, we expect, a decision on whether to criminally charge a former president's company or even the former president himself. And to do that, he is now relying on two tough and renowned legal experts in white-collar crime. This probe's always been about following the money and dealing with secrecy, and then also looking at this enterprise as a whole. The insiders make a striking comparison.
It's all about money with Donald. And I actually went through, a situation where I was asked to literally build false financials.
He doesn't give you questions. He doesn't give you orders. He speaks in a code, much like a mobster would do.
Trump has a way of getting people to do things that he wants them to do without saying, do this.
Strange is it for you to sit here and compare the president to a mob boss?
Very strange. And I don't do it lightly.
Follow the money. If you follow the money, you will get your answers. People need to start following the money.
Those are real witnesses, real veterans of the Trump Organization and the Outer Orbit and other investigators. And you hear the comparisons there by those people who know, from Trump org to mafia tactics. And now we're seeing how prosecutors are scrutinizing and probing the Trump Organization the same way they have mafia organizations. So in our special report right now, we look at the evidence of this. I'm not talking about rhetoric. I'm not talking about labels. I'm talking about the actual prosecutors doing this work right now. Two very specialized hired guns that the DA has tapped for this very case, because the hires can be pretty revealing. They may shed light on what's going on inside an otherwise secret process, this special grand jury that's been impaneled in New York. So meet Mark Pomerantz, a top prosecutor who pursued mafia bosses, a specialist in white-collar crime. He led the criminal division in the famously tough and independent Southern District of New York. He's been dubbed the perfect guy for the job if there is a legal, justified way to take out Donald Trump in court. His most famous prosecution might be putting John Gotti Jr. behind bars, the notorious New York mob boss who headed the Gambino crime family after his father went to prison. Pomerantz was, despite many tries, the only prosecutor to actually get him. Gotti faced, I should say, 4 separate trials in later years, each of them ending in a mistrial.
If you go by the government, who didn't I kill? The day we're picking the jury, I says, I got to try to end this here. I got to try to end this. I says, get me the plea. Get me the plea, I'll take the plea. They chased me out of that industry, but quick.
Get me a plea on day one. This is also someone who's been on the other side of mafia cases, which is pretty interesting. He defended Anthony Bruno Indelicato, a famed member of the Bonanno crime family, who was also, this is why it might be ringing a bell for you, made famous by a depiction in the movie Donnie Brasco.
This is Donnie, a friend of mine. We'll just stand there and look dangerous, friend. Oh, he does look dangerous, Donnie. Come on, Bruno.
Now, this ain't a movie. Here's what's key about the actual case. Pomerantz appealed the real-world situation, the client's conviction there, and forced courts to effectively change the legal definition of racketeering, which had been used to prosecute organized crime figures. Now, Pomerantz has defended some of New York's highest-profile defendants. He knows exactly how it looks on both sides of the table, which means he may have some idea of the kind of hardball, tough defenses that a Trump organization might try to bring out if they do potentially face indictments this year.
Sam Waxel, the former CEO of ImClone and society friend of Martha Stewart. Waxel's attorneys, Mark Pomerantz, argue that Mr. Waxel should have an easier sentence.
Anthony Chiasen, whose conviction on insider trading overturned earlier today by an appeals panel of judges.
Former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer will not face criminal charges for his role in a prostitution scandal.
New York's accidental governor, David Paterson, says the criminal probe of his activities is continuing.
So Mr. Pomerantz is someone you'd want to defend you, although right now he's not available for the Trump org because he's investigating them. He also, in that investigation, has reportedly been involved in these high-stakes Michael Cohen interviews. So that's a lie. Then the other clue. The DA has also tapped Gary Fishman as an assistant attorney general coming from New York Attorney General Letitia James' office, who's been collaborating on this very case. Now, Fishman's a veteran white-collar investigator who has done some very big cases, including aggressively pursuing evidence in these high-stakes financial crimes cases where the banks seem to have all the money in the world for their defense. But he won a $100 million mortgage fraud case, exposed a multi-million-dollar charity theft, then exposed law-breaking by one of the world's largest banks, leading to a record-setting $536 million fine.
$536 million global settlement with Credit Suisse represents by far the largest sanctioned settlement in the history of the Treasury Department.
New York City prosecutors have charged 13 people with running a mortgage scam. They say the defendants bilked homeowners and banks out of more than $100 million.
William Rapfogel was arrested and accused of money laundering, grand larceny, and conspiracy. Rapfogel allegedly then pocketed the cash, more than $1 million.
Those are big legal victories. They led to a previous New York Attorney General tapping him to head the state's Criminal Enforcement and Financial Crimes Bureau. So this is the prosecutor now working to try to flip, well, someone who may or may not allegedly have been involved in financial improprieties. The money man, the CFO, Alan Weisselberg, of the Trump Organization. You take it together and you see what the DA has his eye on. Two heavyweight lawyers working on the Trump Organization criminal probe. One, an expert in organized crime, how the mafia rolls. The other, an expert in financial crime, what people do in those secret boardrooms to steal money, which affects everyone, but you might never hear about it. And most importantly to the DA, and most concerningly for the Trump Organization, these aren't just experts. As I just showed you in brief highlights, they have a track record of winning even tough cases against very tough defendants. Now, I want to say what I've told you before, because we're looking at a very intriguing caseload here, but we don't know where it goes. It's always possible that even hiring aggressive and fair prosecutors, they don't think there's the evidence, and there might be no charges this year. But when a DA brings in these kind of outside legal ringers, people like Pomerantz and Fishman, it's because they think they have a strong case to make. This is something we've been reporting on, but it's also something I just want to give you a clear view here that's pretty much in the legal mainstream, because if you're just doing the ordinary cases, you don't always bring in what I'm calling the ringers. Here's how legal expert Dan Abrams put it on The Beat.
I think it's one of the least discussed decisions, and that was the hiring of Mark Pomerantz. That immediately tells me this is much more serious than the past investigation of the Trump Organization. You don't bring Pomerantz into the office full time unless you've already got a lot.
You don't bring in the ringers unless you have something for them to do.